is the Wednesday Sangha call, the 30th of August, and we're gonna read the Great 40. So we got Zach with us, and he's got the Majjhima Nikaya there, physical copy, so that's pretty cool. And so yeah, this is kind of impromptu. We might have covered the Great 40 before, but this is a text that's quite important in terms of talking about how right view comes first, and the different kinds of sort of view, and also sati, and as well as the noble right effort, and how those run in circles with right view, and also how this comes together to the right unification of mind. So this is the Great 40. Thus I have heard, on one occasion, the Blessed One was staying at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anapanatindika's park. There he addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, venerable sir, they replied, the Blessed One said this. Bhikkhus, I shall teach you noble right concentration with its supports and requisites. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, venerable sir, the bhikkhus replied. The Blessed One said this. What, bhikkhus, is noble right concentration with its supports and its requisites? That is, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, unification. Oh, and right mindfulness. Yeah. Unification of mind equipped with these 7 factors is called right concentration with its supports and requisites. So that's the introductory there, and it talks about, again, the translation for samadhi here is concentration. Often we'll use the unification of mind. So it's the coming together of these factors. So we're going to continue now to right view. So view. There in bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? One understands wrong view as wrong view, right and right view as right view. This is one's right view. And what bhikkhus is wrong view? There is nothing given, nothing offered, nothing sacrificed, no fruit or result of good or bad actions, no this world, no other world, no mother, no father, no beings who are reborn spontaneously, no good and virtuous recluses, and Brahmins in the other world who have realized for themselves by direct knowledge and declare that this and declare this world and the other world. This is wrong view. So, in a kind of a simple way that we might put it with Dhammarato, he brings that up too, is like the idea of like you can just kind of get away with anything, right? So there's not going to be any repercussions for doing sort of misdeeds. It's not none of that. You can just go out, play in traffic. It's fine. That sort of thing. So this is sort of wrong view, kind of in a simple way. And also, too, Zach, when we kind of take the breaks, if there's any bit you would want to add on. Also, if you want to kind of join and read as well at any point, you can kind of pop in too. So
sure, happy to,
right.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll continue down. What bhikkhus is right view? Right view, I say, is twofold. There is right view that is affected by taints, partaking of merit, ripening, and the acquisitions, and there is right view that is taintless, supra-mundane, a factor of the path. And what, bhikkhus, is right view that is affected by taints, partaking in merit, ripening, and acquisitions? There is what is given and what is offered, what is sacrificed. There is fruit and the result of good and bad actions. There is this world and the other world. There is mother and father. There are beings who are reborn spontaneously. There are, in the other world, good and virtuous recluses and Brahmins who have realized for themselves by direct knowledge and declare this world and the other world. This is right view affected by partaking of merit and ripening, this is right view affected by taints, partaking of merit, and ripening and acquisitions. So this is the ordinary kind of right view, which is, pretty much like, yeah, we do good things will happen to us, sort of things. It's a little bit more on the side of like the ritual or the rules, if you will. So we can kind of relate this sometimes as well, to that sort of super ego as well. So these can be all the rule structures. If we go and follow along with the rules, things will be hunky-dory. That's going to be affected by taints, though, because as things change over time, I mean, those rules can change. What we kind of see, like you can see that sometimes with depending on the society that you're in as well, that's going to kind of change a bit. So now we're going to move down to noble right view. And what bhikkhus is right view that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path, the wisdom, the faculty of wisdom, the power of wisdom, the investigation of states, of the state's enlightenment factor, the enlightenment factor of view in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless, who possesses the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is right view that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path. One makes an effort to abandon wrong view and enter upon right view. This is one's right effort. Mindfully one abandons wrong view. Mindfully one enters upon and abides in right view. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus, these three states run in circles around each other. Right view, that is, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. So now we're talking about that right view, which is also, it's helpful to look at that as sort of a right viewing. This is the ongoing investigation and looking into, what is dukkha, what is not dukkha, or what is wholesome, what is unwholesome. So it's that active investigation. It's going to update over time depending on like what the circumstances are. But this is taintless because it's coming back and actually looking and investigating and making that discernment from wisdom. So is there anything you'd like to add on that, Zach?
No, that's, yeah, pretty clear.
All right, yeah. And again, it's really what is helpful about the sutta is it lines out how the path is kind of presented and how we would practically practice, the path as well with this right sort of looking, right effort, and right mindfulness, those running in circles around each other. So one of the ways that I like to remember that is just simply remember, look, and then change. So the change is the right effort. So that's a helpful little kind of way to put that in English. Okay. So now we're going to go on to intention. And Dhammarato sometimes puts this as right attitude as well, which is an interesting way. So right intention, right thought, right attitude. And that's what we're going to be covering here. Therein, bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? One understands wrong intention as wrong intention and right intention as right intention. This is one's right view. And what, bhikkhus, is wrong intention? The intention of sensual desire, the intention of ill will, the intention of cruelty. This is wrong intention. And what, bhikkhus, is right intention? Right intention, I say, is twofold. There is right intention that is affected by taints, partaking in merit, ripening in acquisitions, and right intention that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path. And what, bhikkhus, is right intention that is affected by taints, partaking of merit, and ripening in the acquisitions? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of non-cruelty. This is the right intention that is affected by taints, ripening, and acquisitions. And what, bhikkhus, is right intention that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path? The thinking, thought, intention, mental absorption, mental fixity, directing of the mind, verbal formation, in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless, who possesses the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is the right intention of that that is noble and a factor of the path. One makes an effort to abandon wrong intention and enter upon right intention. This is one's one's right effort. Mindfully one abandons wrong intention, intention. Mindfully one enters upon and abides in right intention. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus, these three states run circle around, right around each other. That is right view, right intention, right effort, and right mindfulness. So that was covering right intention there. It's sort of interesting here too. There is talking about it kind of being affected by taints, like the dropping away or the intention of renunciation and ill will. But actually, it's more just going back to that almost seemingly direct investigation with what is the right intention that's not partaking in the taints. Yeah. Was there anything else you'd like to add, or would you like to read the next part on right speech, Zach?
Sure. I'll jump in.
All right.
Where are we at? Oh, yeah, right here. How's my audio, by the way?
Oh, yeah, I think it's all right. Yeah.
Therein, bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? One understands wrong speech as wrong speech, and right speech as right speech. This is one's right view. And what bhikkhus is wrong speech? False speech, malicious speech, harsh speech, and gossip. This is wrong speech. And what bhikkhus is right speech? Right speech, I say, is twofold. There is right speech that is affected by taints, partaking of merit, ripening in the acquisitions, and there is right speech that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path. And what bhikkhus is right speech that is affected by taints, partaking of merit, ripening in the acquisitions? Abstinence from false speech, abstinence from malicious speech, abstinence from harsh speech, abstinence from gossip. This is right speech that is affected by taints, ripening in the acquisitions. And what bhikkhus is right speech that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path? The desisting from the four kinds of verbal misconduct, the abstaining, refraining, abstinence from them in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless, who possesses the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is right speech that is noble, a factor of the path. One makes an effort to abandon wrong speech and to enter upon right speech. This is one's right effort. Mindfully one abandons wrong speech. Mindfully one enters upon and abides in right speech. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus these three states run and circle around right speech. That is, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness.
Thank you. That's beautiful. But yeah, that's very interesting too. How it comes back to those sati, the viewing and the effort, running in circles around like the right speech as well. And also when we have the right intention, our speech is going to follow. So now I'll read the part on action here.
Yeah, go for it.
Therein, bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? One understands wrong action as wrong action and right action as right action. This is one's right view. And what, bhikkhus, is wrong action? Killing living beings, taking what is not given, and misconduct in sensual pleasure. This is wrong action. And what, bhikkhus, is right action? Right action, I say, is twofold. There is right action that is affected by taints, partaking in merit, ripening in acquisitions, and there is right action that is noble, taintless, supramundane, and a factor of the path. And what, bhikkhus, is right action that is affected by taints, partaking of merit, ripening in acquisitions, abstinence from killing living beings, abstinence from taking what is not given, abstinence from misconduct and sensual pleasures. This is right action that is affected by the taints, ripening in acquisitions. And what, bhikkhus, is right action that is noble, taintless, a factor of the path? the detesting from these three kinds of bodily misconduct, the abstaining, refraining, and abstinence from them in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless, who possesses the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is right action, this is right action that is noble, a factor of the path. One makes an effort to abandon wrong action and enter upon right action. This is one's right effort. Mindfully, one abandons wrong action. Mindfully, one enters and dwells upon right action. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus, these three states run in circle around each other. Right action, that is, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. All right, so that was the part on right action. Do you have anything to add on that before we continue?
Yeah, no, I'm just reflecting on the view, effort, and mindfulness running circles around each other, and thinking about what Dhammarato often talks about, the like wakey, that sense of like alertness, and actually investigating and taking a look at what's going on, and then making that shift.
Yeah.
I like your phrasing it too, the remember, look, change.
Yeah. Because that's the thing, is like we remember to take the look, and then we actually look, and then we make that change, and that can be done with again the action. What's interesting here though too is, as we talk about like the ordinary one, with even like the speech and the action here, there seems to be a thing where like there's benefit from like the abstaining from this, but then when it talks about the mind that's like noble here, and this would be when we actually do the looking and the investigation, there here it says the sort of detests, I believe, like sort of going about that. So it's just that the mind, when we directly look at this, we see, oh, this is not for any sort of benefit, it's not helpful, and therefore we just sort of don't go that way. We don't even need it. So that's sort of like the interesting part, I think, because it says, it's just detesting from these three kinds of bodily misconduct. Yeah. But how, those three factors do run. That's like what this is all about. Okay.
One thought. It's interesting that it's just desisting, or it's like refraining from, and same with the speech as well, refraining from gossip.
Yeah.
Like so much of this is, I think, covered by like noble silence, or just not saying things that are hurtful, like that is, or doing things that are harmful, like that is a massive part. Like there's no big, it's not saying that you have to go out and do all these things or say all these things, which it's nice, I'm sure, but the simply like refraining from doing things that are harmful. Yeah, it's worth reflecting on.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting, and I think like helpful is because it's like, even when we're talking about like the right intention, it talks about things like non-cruelty. Like it's sort of done in like the negative almost, of like canceling something out rather than like something that you're adding to sometimes with these. But yeah, definitely. Oh, did you want to read the part on right livelihood?
Sure.
All right.
Therein, bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? One understands wrong livelihood as wrong livelihood, and right livelihood as right livelihood. This is one's right view. And what, bhikkhus, is wrong livelihood? Scheming, talking, hinting, belittling, pursuing gain with gain. This is wrong livelihood. And what, bhikkhus, is right livelihood? Right livelihood, I say, is twofold. There is right livelihood that is affected by taints, partaking of merit, ripening in the acquisitions, and there is right livelihood that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path. And what, bhikkhus, is right livelihood that is affected by taints, partaking of merit, ripening in the acquisitions? Here, bhikkhus, a noble disciple abandons wrong livelihood and gains his living by right livelihood. This is right livelihood that is affected by taints, ripening in the acquisitions. And what, bhikkhus, is right livelihood that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path. The desisting from wrong livelihood, the abstaining, refraining, abstinence from it in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless, who possesses the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is right livelihood that is noble, a factor of the path. One makes an effort to abandon wrong livelihood and to enter upon right livelihood. This is one's right effort. Mindfully one abandons wrong livelihood. Mindfully one enters upon and dwells in right livelihood. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus, these three states run and circle around right livelihood. That is, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you have anything you'd like to add on that? It's kind of following that same sort of pattern, right? Where it comes back to like the desisting from and abstaining and reframing. Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah. I when I think of like wrong livelihood, I think of like, you know, selling poison or like firearms or like, you know, things that are actively going to cause harm. But yeah, it's interesting, this scheming part, like scheming, talking, hinting, belittling, pursuing.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I think, yeah, how that's kind of worded there. What I think too, well, it's interesting. It's good to keep in mind too with like reading any of the suttas or what have you. It is like a translation, and it's going to have, you know, it's sort of ups and downs with that. So that's also, you know, I think this is why like it's they're very helpful to read the suttas and to understand them, but to take that, you know, stock of that as well. But yeah, no, that is interesting that it goes scheming, talking, hinting, belittling, pursuing gain with gain, right? So you're really kind of going to that greed aspect. Okay. So shall I continue to read the Great 40 part of this?
Go for it.
Okay. So we've got therein bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? In one of right view, right intention comes into being. In one of right intention, right speech comes into being. In one of right speech, right action comes into being. In one of right action, right livelihood comes into being. In one of right livelihood, right effort comes into being. In one of right effort, right mindfulness comes into being. In one of right mindfulness, right concentration comes into being. In one of right concentration, right knowledge comes into being. In one of right knowledge, right deliverance comes into being. Thus, bhikkhus, the path of the disciple in higher training possesses the 8 factors. The arahant possesses 10 factors. Therein, bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? In one of right view, wrong view is abolished. That the many evil, unwholesome states that originate with wrong view as a condition are also abolished. And the many unwholesome unwholesome states that originate with right view as a condition come to fulfillment by development. Sorry, that was wholesome states, yeah. And that was it. Okay. Okay. In one of right intention, wrong intention is abolished, and many evil unwholesome states that originate with wrong view, wrong intention as a condition are abolished, and the many wholesome states that originate with right view, intention as a condition come to fulfillment by development. In one of right speech, wrong speech is abolished. In one of right action, wrong action is abolished. In one of right livelihood, wrong livelihood is abolished. In one of right effort, wrong effort is abolished. In one of right mindfulness, wrong mindfulness is abolished. In one of right concentration, wrong concentration is abolished. In one of right knowledge, wrong knowledge is abolished. In one of right deliverance, wrong deliverance is abolished. And many evil, unwholesome states that originate with wrong deliverance as a condition are also abolished. And many unwholesome states that originate with wrong deliverance as a condition come to fulfillment by development, or sorry, with yes, they originate with right deliverance as a condition come to fulfillment by development. Thus, bhikkhus, there are 20 factors on the side of the wholesome and 20 factors on the side of the unwholesome. The Dhamma discourse on the Great 40 has been set rolling and cannot be stopped by any recluse or Brahmin or God or Mara or Brahma or anyone in the world. Bhikkhus, if any recluse or Brahmin thinks that the Dhamma discourse on the Great 40 should be censored and rejected, then there are 10 legitimate deductions from his assertion that would provide grounds for censoring him here and now. If that worthy one answers right view, then he would honor and praise those recluses and Brahmins who are of wrong view. If that worthy one censors right intention, then he would honor and praise those recluses and Brahmins who are of wrong intention. If that worldly one censors right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, right knowledge, right deliverance, then he would honor and praise those recluses and Brahmin who are of wrong deliverance. If any recluse or Brahmin thinks that this Dhamma discourse on the Great 40 should be censored and rejected, then these are the 10 legitimate deductions from his assertion that would provide grounds for censoring him right here and now. Bhikkhus, even if those teachers from Okala, Vasa, and Brahna who held the doctrine of the non-causality, the doctrine of non-doing, the doctrine of nihilism, would not think that the Dhamma discourse on the Great 40 should be censored and rejected. Why is that? For fear of blame, attack, and confutation. That is what the Blessed One said. The bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted with the Blessed One's words. So that's the end of the Great 40 there. And it's interesting how we come to the Great 40. Because it's like, again, the Noble Eightfold Path, and then it's also knowledge and deliverance. And then it is the opposite, right? So it's like there's like right view, right intention, right? And then there's non-right view and non-intention, so that's how we get to the Great 40. It's kind of interesting how that happens. But yeah, I remember them talking about that before. I remember Dhammarato posing the question, like, why is there, the Great 40, right? But that's because there's a lot of negatives in Buddhism, like as in like count like non, so there's like wrong view and then there's non-wrong view. So if you like step upon right view, you have essentially abandoned non-wrong view.
Yeah.
So it's 10 times 4.
There are a lot of lists.
Yeah, lots of lists, right? But it's interesting because when we break it down like that, it's like, okay, cool. It's actually just those 10 items and then the, opposite of them, and then also the negative, of them. But yeah. So it's like when you abandon wrong view, you enter upon right view, and that's the whole thing. Yeah. But also it's interesting too, he talks about just like, hey, if this is going to be censored, like, like speaking out against that, it's like, oh, it's set rolling, it's not going to help you if you try to censor this. This is the truth.
Yeah, it's funny. Thinking about how old things survive for so long. And I guess one of the ways to preserve something is by saying, hey, if you disagree with this, or try to censure it in some way, come back to bite you.
Yeah.
But one thing I clocked this time on this read was the Eightfold Path as a chain, like view to intention, like each or like steps, each one leading to the next one, which is interesting because I know, there's so much emphasis on right mindfulness and right concentration. I feel in Dhamma circles that it's a good reminder to think about, like, oh yeah, there's steps involved. There's a whole chain of activity. Like, it's going to be really hard to concentrate if your speech is messed up or if you're doing harmful things.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that's interesting too, or is helpful, is like when we're practicing in seclusion, we're not speaking. So there is that aspect. But then there's also the aspect of when you go out in the world and you engage with right speech, you're probably not going to be haunted by regret so much. So, that sort of remorse that can come up. There's that aspect to it, but there's also just the fact that, hey, when you come back and you're sitting there and you're not speaking, your right speech is perfect in that moment. Same with action. Like, if you're sitting in seclusion, it's like, okay, the speech and all that stuff in the immediate sense. I mean, in one way, you could say the livelihood's somewhat figured out there too, at least in the instantaneous thing. You're not going out and harming anyone. That's more to do with the action, but in a sense, that's like it comes back together. But yeah, when you're talking about it, Zach, as like a chain there too, because oftentimes it's like concentration or samadhi is viewed as like this entirely separate thing. But actually, in order to have samadhi, one needs to be practicing these other skills, because that's how we bring about samadhi. That's how we bring about unifying the mind or bringing it into a state of union, is through remembering, looking, changing repeatedly until, oh yeah, now we look around the intention, around the thought, around our attitude. That changes so that it's like, hey, we don't need anything. We're happy campers. All right. Then we don't need to, we can be happy, just sitting there. We don't need to harm anyone. We don't need to do anything like that, So then it switches to that. And so it all comes together. And so it supports each other. Which is like what that samadhi is, which is a very, I find, helpful thing to put it, because sometimes it is very much like, okay, it's this laser focused concentration sort of thing. And like, in one way, like if you are kind of in a certain thing where the mind is concentrated, if it's like focused, yeah, it's not going to be super scattered. But at the same time, when the mind is like all these path factors come together, I mean, it's going to be the same thing. It doesn't need to be the super hardcore laser focus. It can be like focused around the Dhamma, around what is happening here and now, what's going on in the four foundations of Sati, or the Satipatthana. So,
yeah, I think that's a really good insight. I think that there are so many kind of backwards connotations in, in the culture about like concentration and focus. Like they all sort of have this kind of like tight gripping connotation to them, which is like the opposite of what you'd want to do. Words that I really like that I've heard floating around are like collecting, gathering, unifying, all these different ways of reframing that, like, I don't know, because concentration always just makes me think of like, or focus.
Yeah.
Of that kind of like discipline, concentration, or discipline focus, where you're like trying to block out everything else, or
yeah. Yeah, no, that's just it. It does kind of bring up that aspect a little bit more, where it is like, that sort of hard, heavy thing. And it's like, it's enlightenment. It's not heavyment, it's not about making it super heavy. So there's that aspect. But yeah, the collecting of the mind, bringing it together, unifying the mind. Yeah, I find those are all kind of helpful pointers towards samadhi and collecting these factors together. So that it is like, okay, yeah, we just remember, we look, we change, we keep coming back again and again. And that's the thing with sati too, with the mindfulness. It's like a wakeful sort of remembering, right? Like, and what we're remembering is what's now, a lot of the time, right? But it's the way that we're like looking and seeing with that. But it's that remembering to take that look, you know. But oftentimes it's like you're practicing like a lot of places I'll see like you're practicing like mindfulness, and that's completely separate from concentration or completely separate from like insight. When actually it's like practicing them all, they all support each other and they all lead towards, again, when the mind is unified and stable, we can kind of see things as they are. We can see instability. We can see anicca. We can see these things very clearly. And you know, that leads towards that, you know, knowledge and that deliverance. But that also too, this is what I just thought too, this is what I was going to touch on, was the fact that it's like right noble concentration. It is within the context of the Noble Eightfold Path. um so it's, again, it's not just like any form of like just whatever concentration or right noble unification of mind, right noble samadhi. Like, it is within that context all these things are. um yeah. I think another helpful thing too in terms of the right noble looking, and like the continuing with that discernment, is really coming back to it being primarily about dukkha nirodha. That is the thing, you know, because it can be so easy to get sidetracked by something and kind of go down like a path, but it's not actually all that conducive sometimes to dukkha nirodha, and it's coming back to dissatisfaction and realizing the end of dissatisfaction and doing that again and again and again until it like just kind of soaks in.
Yeah. The Buddha like famously not answering questions that have, you know, to do with like cosmology. Or, I mean, that it's in there, but like when people, you know, are asking things that are essentially off topic, yeah, it's a good reminder to get back to what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of the thing, is that we can get sidetracked, and it can be very easy to do that sometimes when we don't remember, and that's why cultivating that skill of remembering, and then again, with that looking, that is that development of that wisdom, and then just coming back to actually put in the effort, just a little bit of effort sometimes. Like, that's what I find with right effort. Sometimes it's a little bit, just a gentle push. Sometimes it needs to be a little bit more. When it's fully developed, it becomes energy. So that's sort of the interesting thing too when we get to like the seven factors of awakening. But yeah, it is like these kind of are around a purpose, and that is recognizing the end of dissatisfaction, right? It's like there's the thing right there, and that's what makes them like right and noble. um and having a mind which is unified, not fighting itself. I like to think about that too when we talk about sometimes like almost like a family internally. And I know Dhammarato likes to bring up like Eric Byrne and that sort of like parent ego state and the child ego state and then the adult, and like sort of having it be like, you know, not fighting, you know, the mind's not fighting itself anymore. All those things are also coming into harmony, right? So it's also like a harmony, uh, a mind which is in harmony with each other. It's in rhythm with each other, you know what I mean? In rhythm.
Yeah, I do know. Yeah, I think. Yeah, just trying to. I've heard other people phrase that in terms of harmony, like harmonious speech, harmonious action. Um, yeah, I think that's Dhammasuka. They talk a lot about that.
Okay.
But I had another thought, but it's escaping me right now.
Yeah, that was earlier when I was talking about the right noble um unification of mind, and I was saying like why it was like, actually like right noble unification of mind as opposed to just any form of concentration or what have you, or any form of mindfulness or what have you, and it being in context. That when that happened, before that thought had escaped me, and then it came back, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what I intended to talk about. So sometimes the mind does it, and it's funny because it'll come on back. Yeah, it's interesting, but it's seeing that, and then also like noticing, like letting go, like just being like, hey, you know what, that's okay too. I don't have to finish that point or what have you. Even those little things of dukkha, we start to become so aware of, and it's quite interesting. It's quite helpful, I find. Yeah, quite revealing.
Yeah, just in terms of harmony, because right, right and wrong also have the like kind of those two harmonious, right? Um, yeah, there's a whole bunch of problems that arise with translation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing I like to think about though when it comes to right is like when you're practicing this, it's like it's actually going to make things be like, oh yeah, no, it's all right. It's kind of like, because honestly, when you come back into like the dukkha thoughts or like the thoughts that lead to dukkha, they're just thoughts, but the content of them, you follow them, it's going to lead down that trail into the unwholesome. It's going to be like a mind that's like, no, this isn't right, everything's wrong, that's wrong or what have you. So it's more like, hey, you know what, right attitude, right unification of mind, it makes everything all right in that sense. Like it makes it come back to like, hey, that is all right. Like but what about that thing? Whatever that thing is that's preventing it to coming back to that feeling of rightness, to it being okay, to that feeling of completion, that feeling of being whole. Whereas dukkha is kind of like, something's off here, buddy.
Yeah, just like general
Yeah,
unease. Yeah.
unease, dissatisfaction. But yeah, definitely it's interesting. I've been using the word interesting a lot, but I think it is helpful to look at that as, in some other ways, like harmonious or rhythmic, or coming into, like, again, it's coming into accord. And I think in a way it's starting to come in more and more into accord with reality, coming more into accord with reality as it is, as opposed to pushing away from it or craving for any particular thing within it as well. So again, it's not saying like, oh, well, we can still have skillful actions in the world. And I think even like with this, even when it comes to ordinary, right view, there is a time and a place for it. But ultimately, it's not going to lead to, a satisfaction which is, in one way, I want to say, more reliable, right? So, but it is helpful, it is positive, but this goes beyond the positive and the negative, and it goes straight towards like the wholesome, which is like, hey, we can just be happy right here right now with this breath. Don't need a lot.
Yeah, I like that.
Welcome, Pietro.
Guys, sorry,
Hey.
I totally fell asleep completely. I fell asleep completely. Hi, friends.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good. I decided to read the Great 40 again. We had Zach join us, so it's really nice. Yeah, we took turns reading it, and yeah. I didn't have a sutta lined up, so I was just like, you know what? Let's go for that one. And we might have covered it before on here, but it is a pretty one that we kind of go back to reference quite a bit, especially when we're talking about like that sati viewing effort and remembering to take that look and make it a wholesome change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it took a little snooze. Yeah. Yeah, how have you been, Petra?
Well, really, guys, like I decided to like do a I was here in charge to do the call today, and seated at the desk, like put the iPad in front, and looked up for a nice guided meditation. And I found out this meditation, which was more like a body scan, actually, but body scan for a really navigated monk. So, like, the body scanning was like 4 minutes, 5 minutes in the feet, 4 or 5 minutes in the ankles, and so on. It was really, really slow. So at a certain point, I managed to go all the way through all the body, and so when it was like I don't remember, sort of like repeating the whole process and so on, it was like 9:15, and I felt like here in Italy, which is like almost 8 p.m. in UK, and I felt so tired, but really, really tired. Like this meditation got me super. Plus, I just eat so. But anyway, it got me really tired. So like I go on the sofa and I say, okay, it's just 10 minutes. It's just 10 minutes. I wait when the meditation finishes. I wake up again, and it never happened. Like actually, I fell asleep more than 1 hour. Like nothing else. But yeah, really, because when I do meditation, like I have the habit of doing the body scan pretty fast, actually. Like even if it's actually you do centimeter by centimeter. So by the way, you will not take more than 4 or 5 minutes to do all the body if you're very, very slow, I think.
Yeah.
But sometimes, especially if it is a guided meditation, so the person, the monk in this case, describes actually how you can nurture each part of the body, how you can really relax every tension. And so there is actually a lot to say. And so, yeah, it was like 4 or 5 minutes in the feet. So really, really slow. And sometimes like I was my mind is trained actually, as I say, to go pretty fast, like this fast to go through all the body. For me this is pretty slow actually.
Yeah. And yeah, I can kind of see that, yeah, being a little bit slower. I tend to like when I practice, like it's just like more like, okay, go to the forehead, relax the tensions there. Like it's more just like whatever sort of tensions get pretty relaxed in like a minute or something, and then just kind of continue on with the practice like that. So, but yeah, I think there can be benefit, yeah, to doing some of those as well, and really looking and nurturing, the parts of the bodies, and really kind of getting in there can be something fun to do as well with the body scan. I mean, I've done similar things in the past, so I kind of get what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sure it would really help with sense clarity to really take your time and investigate what's going on. Yeah, I think just taking that time sounds like a good idea. But yeah, other ones I tend to go fast too. There was another one. I think Analio has one that is based on like Satipatthana, where it's like skin, flesh, bones, and you're like scanning by the end of it like pretty rapidly. So
yeah, I also think like we also have we all have some kind of patterns when we think about meditation. Also, the previous Sangha call, I was very pleased to hear TJ sharing with me some of his happy thoughts that he uses in Anapanasati, like certain reminders of repeat yourself mindfully, breathing long, mindfully breathe out long, but also remembering. Could be a nice thought like happy camper, like we say the other time, or remembering so. I enjoyed your perspective because we all have like this. Especially after some time of the meditation, we have these kind of patterns that we always link to meditation. So, but sometimes it's really cool to find another perspective of practicing. Like in my case, for example, yeah, in the end it got me really tired, but it was really cool to see, especially from a, it was like a 70-year-old monk, so I believe he had some kind of experience on his side, and it was really cool to see his perspective on this body scan because because after some time doing meditation, I honestly have my patterns. Like I have my cycles of routine. Like I have these thoughts that make me feel at home. I go cyclical through them. Like I have maybe 10 breaths with some thoughts, 10 breaths with other thoughts. So, and I feel like at the end of those thoughts, I feel like I'm very happy, and usually I'm in a good state after those 10 to 15 minutes. I know I reached a kind of good state. And so, that also before I was hearing this talk about how it's really important to make the breath your own base. In fact, I say sometimes like breathing is my coping mechanism. It's like something I want to remind myself, like using breath as really this this cool this cool oil, to make our mechanism of the mind move, to remind, to join the parts of the mind and so on. But yeah, the main point here was to really look at the different sides about the practice of meditation, because also when I go out like a bit of I look for other ajahns, other bhikkhus, and so on. They it's cool to see the different way they teach meditation, because also then it's up to you to remember and to find out what are the safe spots that are in common in these different kind of teachings, and it's very cool. Plus, yes, I was talking about also about this thing about the pattern that one has in meditation. That really is a good point to me, because actually, when one is alone, he has this certain inertia, even if it's a really good way of proceeding, let's say through life, but also through the practice of meditation. One has really his own patterns. And one of the most beautiful things about the Sangha is really find out the, also in this course, we find out often that truth comes out like it's also a shared thing, you know. It becomes a shared thing when everyone joins his point of view. Like could be a path that could be seen together also. This is actually really cool, you know, when there are more people practicing on the path. You know, maybe one time one person gets ahead, the other time the other person gets ahead, and so we all pretty good the path together. Because yeah, from the last time, like I really use your thoughts, DJ. I prefer you really, yeah, because just the fact that a friend told me that his share with me his perspective. I like honestly like to use also your thoughts and so on to, yeah.
It's really nice, kind of that sort of sharing of the wholesome thoughts. I still use one that I got a while ago from Eric, who actually ordained, um, but he told me, one of his friends told him that one. She said, "Glad to see you," and that was something that kind of took him aback because he didn't really hear anyone say that before. So he told me that, and now what I do is actually use that as a bit of a spotter. So whenever I see like a hindrance arise or what have you, I go, "Glad to see you," and I kind of think little bit about Eric there, and it's sort of like, you know, it's gladdening the mind. It's bringing that sort of gladdening aspect, but it's also practicing metta as well. It's like loving kindness. And so that's sort of the nice thing too, is we can kind of, think about our Dhamma friends, and that kind of adds to, a gladdening aspect as well. So we can gladden the mind with that friendship. Yeah. So it's really nice to share. And I'm glad that, you got some benefit out of that. And yeah.
Yeah, I love that, gladdening. And even this, like the sort of welcoming or creating space for or allowing, seems to be
Yeah.
part and parcel with that.
It's really training in the aspect of when you see the hindrance, it's like, okay, you're glad you saw the hindrance, as opposed to sad and bummed out that you saw it, because that's what we're really training, right? Is that nurturing aspect of when we see it. Yeah, and adding, allowing that space, but it does also make it so it's not like we're not putting in the right effort. We're putting in the right effort. We're gladdening. We're to sort of be able to handle, the reality of the situation. Yeah. It makes things nice and smooth. And even when they're rocky, we can appreciate the rockiness.
And I remembered what I was going to say before.
Oh.
You're just changing the way that we relate to ourselves, like the internal family system aspect. Mm-hmm. Like that's just become such a popular idea now in Dhamma and meditation circles. But yeah, I think it's part of that, of like shifting some of those ways that we relate or look at those different parts.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when talking about like samadhi and gathering together the mind, or having it come into harmony. And eventually too, we come into harmony with ourselves, but then also we become into harmony, into union with the world, with the whole body of reality. That's the Dhammakaya. So we step into that, and we start to recognize we are the whole, my friends. We are the whole, friends. But yeah, there's that aspect too, right? But it's when we can become friends with ourselves, we can become friends with others, we can become friends with reality.
Yeah.
But It's interesting talking about the body scanning though, and becoming like aware of the body. It's very helpful. And also step 4 of Anapanasati, which is the relaxation of the body. That is definitely a very helpful skill I find to cultivate and continue with, and kind of know, hey, you know what? Oftentimes there's tensions on the shoulders, and we can just put in a little bit of effort to relax that, or in the forehead. And
Yeah,
then you
so
can, yeah.
sorry, I'm gonna share with you this what I've heard from this talk about the 16 steps from Tanisar Bhikkhu. And the four steps about the body, about the relaxation of the body, it was a cool insight it gave to me, like both in one of his guided meditation, about in this talk, as well as in this talk. So one cool skill to develop is actually to perceive. So the let's say the body breath. How to say, the energy body of the breath. So the perceiving the breath not just as air coming in and out the lungs, but like a field of energy that can enter from all the pores in the body. So like the body is a sponge that can fill in with air from each part, and like expelling from each side and every pore the air. So like this sponge effect. Because a very important thing in the relaxation of the body, you said, and then I verified a little in practice, is to learn how to perceive the whole body at the same time, like holding in the mind the image of, but also being present in the experience of the whole body, of the whole body of breath, so perceiving the whole body. And one way that one can do this, because to do this, the mind has to be pretty settled down. And so one way to do this is like uh, doing various sides of the body, like starting from the navel, for example, and then maybe moving to the right side of the navel and to left side of the navel. Do a sort of body scan. But the intention here, let me say, if I can explain it, is to use a focus point, a focus area, but learn to expand your awareness from there, so that is centered, but is also a bit more expanded, the awareness. And so when you find out that your attention is very settled down into a particular area, from there you can expand your awareness, but let it remain centered. And so you can learn to perceive the whole body at the same time, like a full body awareness at the same time. And it is pretty important to develop the steps about the 4 steps about the body of the 16 steps. There was a talk of today about Mr. Rubicco. It was really interesting. This way of perceiving the body. By the way, I believe like this is kind of if you listen some kind of, I used to listen to teachers like that talk about the state of presence and so on. And like this is actually the state of presence. When they tell to feel the reactive body and these kind of things, now it really does make more sense, because it is actually this thing that when you feel the body breath and you learn it to stabilize it, you're not reactive at the time. You're not reacting. So yeah, this reminds me of the state of presence. When Eckhart Tolle, for example, is this teacher that he talks about like the inner body, the awareness of the inner body, for example. And so this is the inner body awareness. So yeah, now I have to put the mind together about this because I heard it this afternoon. But yeah, he put an emphasis on the 4 steps of the bodily formations about the body. So that I believe there are the four steps of 16 to learn to have the full body awareness is important to make it stable and the whole awareness of the body. And the body scan is actually a step for this thing. Because the body scan can help the mind to settle eventually in a part of the body scan. So like it's important for developing the insights. Developing insights comes when there is a certain stillness of the mind. When the mind is still, the attention settles down. You eventually can work with the perception. Yeah, it's this is to say that each day, like my mind is a bit more straight about what is how things works in meditation, and still I practice from quite a long time, but quite some time, let's say. But still, there are many points of view because like people practice for years and years and years, and Buddhism is more than 2,000 years old, and people have been practicing for ages. So
Yeah, no,
there's a lot of experience, but as we say, like the importance of being this reference point for yourself and this calming point for yourself, because I could not get into even this kind of try to understand try to understand also the theory of like let's say the Eightfold Noble Path, the 16 stages, the factors, and so on. If I could not have this calming and nurturing effect upon myself, because imagining how it could be frustrating, for example, to have to do with a lot of information and so on. So the real skill is to keep yourself satisfied, to keep yourself that you can handle the situation. That one day you fail at meditation, one day you fall asleep because you were tired with meditation. It happened at my home. Maybe it could happen in the hall, in a retreat, like everybody leaves the hall and you're still sleeping on the cushion. And so you better be nurturing with yourself,
Yeah. Well, I think we were kind of talking about this before, but it's helpful to come back to like the core sort of thing of dukkha nirodha. I think that but it's cool to again look and to see all the different kind of perspectives on it sometimes, and to investigate those and to see directly what works and what doesn't work, what's helpful and beneficial and like what's not helpful and beneficial, and to kind of see that and to play with your practice and to see where it kind of goes. But yeah, I think that can be very helpful if we do find ourselves ever getting kind of like lost or what have you, or frustrated because our meditation's not going well. Like, okay. I set the bar really low when it comes to to meditation. So low I can hit it every time I remember. But yeah, it's interesting though, because like, I mean, depending on what's happening, sometimes things will be a little bit more restless. So being able to come back, to sort of a state of restfulness, to being able to just really breathe in that relaxation and what have you, and what you were saying, Pedro, with the really breathing into the body, bringing in that breath aspect of it, right, is like really cool. And then playing with that body of breath and with the attention too, almost with it. That's something, I sometimes, play around with. And even sometimes if I rest the attention in a particular area, that expansion, you can kind of get into more of a peripheral sort of, it expands out to where you're, sort of aware of the whole body, and then kind of beyond that even. Can be interesting to play around with attention and also the breath like that.
Yeah, I think cultivating a certain degree of flexibility with attention and awareness is a worthwhile practice. I've done a lot of a practice, TMI, the mind illuminated, where they a lot about like those whole body body scans, or like seeing if you can hold the whole body in awareness when practicing. And I find that the effect that it has, because so much meditation is just focused on the tip of the nose, or it's all kind of trending in that direction. But I find opening things up a little bit more to the whole body almost has like a supercharging effect on the practice when you do bring it back to the breath, because your awareness has to hold so much information happening at the same time that when you bring it to a smaller point, it's almost more refined, or I don't know, supercharged is the way that
yeah. It's interesting because as we're talking, I'm kind of playing around a bit with the attention and sort of noticing too that, like, you can bring it in like to the nose, but actually expand and almost like have it expand out. But that actually sometimes can be like almost like a level of perception where, like, when you really zoom in, it's kind of very similar to like zooming back out, and it's really like this sort of manner of perception right there. So like, even if we're kind of going in and scanning like this, each part of that, you can kind of just see like, oh wait, we have this idea of it being this really solid, big difference in the mind, but again, it's just sort of a perception kind of thing. But yeah, I think that's interesting, playing with the attention, and then like, just practically just relaxing the body with that too. That helps with the breath.
Yes. So does anybody remember like about the 16 steps? Because I've heard it today about it. So it's like the first four are about the body, right?
Yeah. Are you talking about the 16 steps of Anapanasati?
Oh, Anapanasati, yes.
Yeah. So the first four on the body. So actually, funny enough, the one wholesome thought that you were saying that you used that I told you was actually the first step of Anapanasati, which is just breathing in long. I know I am breathing in long.
Yeah, exactly.
Breathing out long.
Yes,
I know I'm
and
breathing
there
out
is
long.
there is like, so the long breath, the short breath, like
Yep.
also the
And then
okay.
aware, so and then the third one is like breathing in long, aware of the whole body, or whole body of breath, depending on the translation, and breathing out long, mindful of the whole body and all that stuff. So like that sort of thing, right? So it's on the body and
Yeah.
becoming aware of the body, awake to
Okay.
the body, that thing. And then the fourth is actually the relaxation of the body, or tranquilizing bodily formations. It depends on the thing, but pretty much is pointing towards what I have gathered through kind of reading different translations and then directly practicing with it. It is that relaxation of the body. Now, it's interesting because Dhammarato points out that these steps don't necessarily, like any of the steps of Anapanasati, have to come in a particular order. It's more like dance steps. So we can learn the different dance steps and then we can kind of get a little freestyle with it, right? So it's kind of like learning scales and chords. And then we can do like some, freeform jazz or what have you once we start to get into that. And also sometimes you can see an overlap between the different steps as well. Like you can be aware that you're taking a long breath and be also aware of the body and relaxing the body and also feeling a sense of joy, right? So the fifth step of Anapanasati is piti. So that's the joyful success, that we get. And then the sixth is a sukha. So that's the satisfaction element. Yeah. So those are some more. I'm pretty sure I have them pretty well. Well, I have them memorized, at least my own kind of interpretation from reading different versions of the 16 steps. Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange because I've only with Dhammarato, like it's been more than a year, but still certain things I've not again learned on the memory, like not again. Like okay, 4 numbers. Oh, sometimes I can do that. I can remember that. But anyway, even if like practice going on well, I can sit down and meditate and have a good time and enjoy. Certain really kind of linking my understanding to the theory is very hard for me actually. Like I have to listen over and over again. Eventually, sometimes something makes click. Like looking at maybe at our calls on the YouTube channel, like Piti, Sukha, Upika, and so on. Like something clicks, little by little. Yeah, like I really enjoy also this side of the Buddhism, because having clarified that one has to not be excessively have excessive hunger towards the information, towards the knowledge. It's still very enjoyable to understand how things works, also to understand maybe how the scripture are divided and so on.
Yeah,
like the major discourses, the middle discourses, the collections of actually there is a lot of information free available online. Like there is this thing called the Buddhist University, which has a lot of, actually it has also courses, like it has Buddhist 101, which is a really basic course about like for example the triple gem and a basic meditation, but it's actually like a 2-month course or something. And then it has also one thing that I found that I will look into is like the Pali course, Pali beginning course, so that you can try to learn some sutta on your own from the original language. It's pretty cool actually. Yeah, Buddhist University.
Yeah,
so one cool side is also to have some of this link with the theory. Think that really the old monks have really this beautiful knowledge on their side.
Yeah, it's helpful. I think it's really nice to engage with, like, as we continue to practice and also learn new terms and all that stuff, and maybe even learn some of the lists and what have you, is to recognize too you know, we have also, you know, pretty much all the knowledge that we need as well. You know, you've listened to you've called Dhammarato a couple of times. You've listened to a couple of talks. I mean, you really, it's the practice is very basic. And so that's the thing that's kind of like helpful to remember if we do kind of catch ourselves like, oh boy, I got to get more of this, right? But it can be helpful. It can be helpful too, right? To look into a little bit more. And if you take joy in that, then like, yeah, sure. Continue to look, continue to investigate, you know. And it also helps to share as well. It helps to share the Dhamma. And yeah, I think it can be helpful again to, on one hand, Gabby, it's really nice to come back and speak from direct experience and to really kind of emphasize that. But again, we don't have to be completely adverse to sort of the intellectual side either. It's just not getting, I think, too ensnared in it. So it's being able to see it for what it is and then kind of, you know, use it to its advantage. And then when it's not being so much an advantage anymore, we can just be like, okay, we can just drop it for a bit and just come back to breathing in long. I know I'm breathing in long.
Mm-hmm.
I'm breathing out long. I know I am breathing out long. But I do think it's about time for me to depart. So it has been a really, wonderful call. Thank you very much for coming on, Zach, and also Paisha. Thank you as well. And yeah, it's nice to meet you, Zach, and talk, and also great seeing you again, Paisha. So, all right.
Hey, nice to meet you too, Zach.
Yeah, nice
See
to
you
meet you.
soon. Thanks, DJ. Setting the call. See you guys.
Sadhu.